Okay, just as a reminder, because I almost did it, and that is, please use the microphone so you can be on the tape. It's important, to whatever you're saying, everybody's really interested. So with that, we'll go into introductions. Why don't we start with Mr. DeGrash?
There we go. Hi guys, I'm Durgesh Patel. I'm the owner of Blue Rock Ventures. And you want me to talk about my role or just my name?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll be the developer on this project.
Hi, I'm Don Luthard. I'm with Ada Architects. We're the architects for the project.
Carl Johansson, Ada Architects.
Lee Wells, Ridgefield. Oh, okay. All right. Lee Wells, Ridgefield City Council.
I'm Matt Cole, Ridgefield City Council.
Jennifer Lindsay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Judy Chipman, Ridgefield City Council.
Clyde Burkle, Ridgefield City Council.
And Ron Onslow, Mayor. So, Mr. Stewart, you want to start us off with the program?
Happily to help, sir. And thank you, Mayor, members of the council and the community for joining us for this update to the community on the Ridgefield Recreation and Community Center project. We do have one other guest that will be joining us at the table here very shortly. Tyler Wright, who is the president and CEO of Columbia Willamette YMCA, will be joining us at the table as well. You good? Yep. Okay. So we start in the beginning. The picture you see behind this slide is of importance for the nature of the conversation we're having because it really is where we started. And that was in 2014, 2015, we had a city councilor by the name of John Main. John Main came to us from Sherwood. In Sherwood, there is a YMCA. The picture that you see on this slide is the Sherwood YMCA. It was conversations between then Councilor Main and the City Council of Ridgefield that began at that time about the idea for a YMCA here in Ridgefield and how we might be able to do it in a similar fashion to what Sherwood had accomplished. So thus the nature of the picture. That early conversation led to more detailed conversations with the YMCA about opportunities for Ridgefield to have its own. That culminated in a feasibility study which occurred in 2016. That feasibility study, this is from the executive summary that you see before you. A few of the kind of key takeaways that were in the executive summary, one of them was a very high level of interest for a new Ridgefield YMCA. One of the metrics that is used to determine the interest for a YMCA is that a total of 13.5 of all households that don't belong to the Y in the survey area expressed a great deal of interest in joining a new YMCA here in Ridgefield. That's compared to a national average of 4.5% for a full facility YMCA and is above and beyond the 0.9% of households that already belong to the Y. So this was one of those key metrics that the consultant that did the work came forward with to really show that this was a big opportunity for the community, but also for the YMCA. The community characteristics that they saw were a community that had a lot of existing nonprofit providers, but was in great need of services. As a reminder, this was done in 2016 before we even had Rose Hours. So the study looked at a community that didn't even have a full service grocery store. So there was a lot of nonprofit interest, a lot of work already going on, but not a lot of services that were already provided. I'm gonna take a quick, just 1 second break here to welcome one of the partners on the project. I already let them know that you would be here, so I just want to give you a second to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm late. Hi, I'm Tyler Wright. I'm the president and CEO of the YMCA. I do apologize. You would think somebody who lived in Los Angeles for 30 years would know traffic, and so I do apologize, but thank you for having us here, Steve.
We're glad you're here. Thank you, Tyler. So back to kind of the executive summary from the 2016 study. And as a reminder, the 2016 study was actually a partnership between the YMCA and the city of Ridgefield. The city paid for half of it, the YMCA paid for half of it, and the idea was to show that commitment and involvement and investment from both parties. The consultant who actually did the work was a consultant that the YMCA had worked with on a number of projects up and down the West Coast. They were based out of, I think, San Francisco is where the consultant was based out of, and had done a number of project evaluations for the Y at that time. The third bullet down here is that the primary prospective member groups of a new facility included adult couples and families with children. This is something we already know about Ridgefield. We knew it in 2016. It is even more so now, obviously, considering that our population is basically double what it was in 2016. So that community was relatively high incomes, large family sizes, and younger than other areas within Clark County. And that a lot of those families were looking for a third place at the Y, and it was something that they talked about a lot. There was home, there was work, and that third place. And the third place really was this kind of Starbucks concept that that Starbucks has really driven home and used to great effect, is to develop a third place where people want to go, to congregate, to meet, spend time. So that was something that was really talked about a fair amount. And then lastly, that if the decision was made to proceed with the building of a new Ridgefield Y, that consultant recommended an indoor facility with approximately 50,000 square feet and an outdoor trail with fitness stations. So that was their start. So next slide really looks at the membership potential that they saw in 2016. Now, we'll see this later. These things have adjusted over time. There's two significant reasons that we think that we've seen this change over time. Number one is we've grown dramatically. Obviously, we've grown a lot. So when we look at membership projections and new units at current rates or at lower rates, actually showing almost $27.98 for new units at the current rates, and the revenue and revenue per unit. These are metrics that the YMCA has to use to figure out do these projects pencil. We've grown a lot as a community. Basically we've doubled. So you look at that and you say, well, then likely we would see these go up dramatically. But there's also another dynamic at play, and that's the reset of the market post-pandemic. And we'll talk about that a little bit, and I certainly would lean on our partner at the YMCA to kind of help us better understand that, because they know that and that market and how it's all working a lot better than I ever could. And then the last piece of the feasibility study that I wanted to make sure that we mentioned is, what did people want to see? When we asked people, what are those features that would drive you to become a member at a new YMCA? And you can see this on the slide. Yeah, it's big enough you can see it. Good. You can see it on the slide that when you look at, what are the things that drive people, the features, wellness and fitness center. For adult fitness, very high. For women's programs, very high. Family activities are moderate. You look at the family activities, an indoor warm water family pool. When you go across and you look at family activities, and then you go to indoor warm water family pool, high in their kind of desired feature set. Same thing for programs. Programs for children 6 to 9, for certainly on the family side of it. But that gave us a basic sense of what are the kind of key priorities for features that would be located and that we would want to find in a new YMCA, such that you would create optimal membership numbers. Because obviously you want to have the features that drive people to become members. If you don't have those features, they'll find someplace else. Sorry, one more thing. For the feasibility study, this kind of just reiterates the indoor features that were critical to the success of a new Ridgefield YMCA. That quote is from the feasibility study itself. So first-class wellness center, indoor walking and running track, exercise studios, an indoor warm water family pool, an indoor multi-purpose activity center or gym, multi-purpose classrooms with dividers for children's creative arts programs, community meetings, child watch, babysitting area, kids zone, youth and teen center, members lounge. Those are the kinds of things that really came forward as key elements for a Ridgefield YMCA in the 2016 study. So from that point, we started looking at where might we be able to site this YMCA. And the map you see here is actually a representative map that with the question marks representing areas that we looked at. We looked down by the Ridgefield Outdoor Recreation Complex. We looked just south of where Pioneer Village is. We looked at Discovery Ridge. We looked east of the interstate by Clark College. And we looked where we ultimately found a space, which is just on the north side of Pioneer at about 50th, 51st. So we were evaluating properties. We were working with the YMCA to evaluate properties, including those that I just mentioned. We looked at funding strategies for how we might be delivering that project, because what our council communicated to staff was that we were not interested in putting a sign up in our community that said future home of, and then just sitting there and watching that sign grow grass. That we wanted to actually see something move forward, and we didn't want to wait and just pass the hat until things were done, and then we would finally build. We had an example just to the north of us that our council was seeking to avoid. So we were looking at different, more unique funding opportunities. So we looked at strategies including the public land purchase, private developer land donation, private construction with a YMCA lease, and YMCA giving campaign to fund the construction. At the time, none of those evaluations led to a successful combination of landowner, developer, facility construction, and management. So those 3 years, there was a lot of looking going on, but nothing really came to fruition. Then finally, there was a breakthrough. And the breakthrough came in 2019. The city identified a property which had already been purchased for Parks and Recreation that could be dedicated for a YMCA. And that property was actually owned by the sewer district. It was Clark Regional Wastewater District that owned property at 50th, 51st, just north of Pioneer. They had needed that for development of, they needed easement and right-of-way and land for a sewer pipe that they had put through there. And so once they were done with all of that, they said, we really don't need this property. Would you be interested in purchasing it for Parks and Recreation? So the city did. And once the city had purchased it for Parks and Recreation purposes, all of a sudden the light bulb came on that this might be an opportunity for where a YMCA could go. And there was conversations with the YMCA at that time. The previous president CEO, Bob Hall, came out, went to the site with members of council and staff, looked at it, said, yeah, I think this might be something that could work for us for access, visibility, proximity. Then we started moving forward with ideas for how we might deliver the project. In 2020, the city was contacted by a local private developer who you just met, Durgesh Patel, who expressed an interest in assisting our community with building a YMCA. There was a new YMCA of Columbia Willamette president and CEO, Tyler Wright, who's sitting at the table with us this evening. And at that time, a public-private partnership was reevaluated. In 2018, that concept hadn't moved forward. We didn't have the partners and pieces in place for it. The city was already looking at public-private for what is now the Bluffs. We were looking at using a public-private for a variety of various projects, but it hadn't come to fruition until Mr. Patel stepped forward and offered his assistance. That really stepped it up to be able to look at a public-private. An interlocal between Mr. Patel, the YMCA, and the city started being formed to create the partnership, and that would be that the city provides the land for the YMCA and funds the YMCA site plan design. The YMCA would fund the building design and manage the facility with an option to purchase the facility, and a private developer would build that facility and lease back to the YMCA with a purchase option. That culminated in a letter of intent that was signed that is before you now, and it kind of memorializes those basic elements, but at a really high level. I think the last paragraph sentences are the most important, which is that it's an important step toward building a YMCA in the city of Ridgefield, and that the partners were excited about working with each other on this project. And that really was what this was about, is trying to identify the key elements of it, but this is not contractual. This was not a contract between the parties. This was just the intent to work together. And then there was a thing called the coronavirus pandemic. About that same time, I put this slide in here because it was just a reality check. The reality check in March of 2020, the whole world changed. So the idea of what we were working on, it wasn't a continuous flow. There were these ebbs and flows to it, and there were stops and starts. And there was a significant time where there was a stop, where other things had to be dealt with. And so this is something that I mentioned just to remind us, because I think sometimes we forget there was like 2.5 years that were just this completely different world we lived in. But during that time, what we also did get to was some design work. The design phase started in 2021. The site plan design contract was signed with Johansson Wing Architects, which is now Ada Architecture. Ada, yeah? Ada, thank you, which is now Ada Architecture. On a parallel track, Johansson Wing, Ada, was also signed by the YMCA for the building design, which was a great thing because then we had the site design and the building design being done by the same team so that we could really coordinate more effectively on that. They were separate bids. They were actually two separate requests for proposals, but in the evaluation, it just became clear that it just made perfect sense to have the same team working on both for this. Then in July of 2021, it was determined that additional acreage would be necessary to avoid and minimize the wetland impacts on the site that we owned as a city. So the city completed a purchase of another almost 2 acres, 1.89 acres. So that created a total public ownership of 10.32 acres in the area that you see in the little map there. The additional site area is the area that's kind of got the red little cloud bubble thing around it. That's the area that we purchased. The area that's north of it is still privately owned, and ultimately will have a roadway connection over to Royal Road. The area to the south and to the east of it, that's the other area that the city owns. So a total of about 10 acres. But if you look at it, you can see, and anyone who knows it, along Pioneer, there's some wetlands. There's significant environmental constraints between Pioneer and kind of the upland area that we could work with. Thus, we needed an extra almost 2 acres to really fit the building that was necessary into the site. So that work was done. The city actually worked with the private owner of the parcels next to it. That big parcel, we were able to carve that off, did a boundary line adjustment. Voila, we have enough acreage to be able to do the project. We also began design for the improvements to Pioneer. Again, lots going on. This is another big piece of the puzzle for us, is what are the improvements to Pioneer? You're gonna see those coming to life this year. The design for that started in 2021. It was focusing on widening Pioneer to 4 lanes, from Rose Hours to 56th, multimodal improvements, bike, ped, and a new roundabout at 50th, 51st that would ultimately travel north to serve the YMCA, and then travel south to serve the Lottie property that includes commercial and industrial development, and on the southern end, Pack Trust, where they're currently building 400,000 square foot shells. So then we move forward and we get to that 30% design. In 2022, that's when we started. We were at 30% design in 2022 to really start showing the community the picture of what might be done. That was when the City Council in January received a presentation revealing design renderings for a Ridgefield YMCA. Now, this is important. Those renderings were at 30%. They didn't have a cost estimate to them. They were what I lovingly refer to as pretty pictures. So these pretty pictures helped us get a sense of what we were trying to create and how we might do it, but it didn't have the price tag attached to it. Early on, the idea was somehow it would be about a $20 million project. That's what we were thinking it would be. So we get to these 30% drawings, we think, all right, we're looking at, trying to get to a $20 million project. This is what we might get to. So the renderings and rough timeline, not only were they shared with the community through the city council meeting, it was also shared on our social media. It was shared as part of the state of the city. This is when people started seeing this. The pretty picture. So this is what we shared in 2022. This is what a lot of people have seen as a Ridgefield YMCA. A lot of light, southern exposure, a natatorium that had a warm water and a lap pool, athletic facilities and a gym, kids areas, locker rooms, really something that offered a lot for the community and offered the amenities that the community had really been asking us for. And you can kind of see that from an aerial here. There was also an area where and you can kind of see it on the east side of there where it said PT tenant and it said future tenant. One of the concepts around that time was the idea of not only having a public-private partnership on the development of it, but also on the users of it, the actual kind of user groups that were in it. The idea being is maybe you could actually have private tenants in this structure that would defray the overall costs and could be they could leverage the resources of a YMCA, like childcare, like physical therapy. That's PT, physical therapy. So the idea was, is there an opportunity where we can partner up with a private physical therapy group who might want to locate in this building, pay rent, lower the overall cost for the public entities and for the YMCA. So those were kind of the concepts that were floating at that time. More pictures. Again, warm water pool, colder water lap pools, zero entry, families and children, exposed wood beam, LEED certification, trails, and coronavirus pandemic. Oh, and you think I just put that on there? I did just put that on there. But I'm showing it again. There's a reason, because that was one of the key resets. Is in early 2022 and in 2022, we showed these pretty pictures and these designs of what could be done. Now, these designs were over 50,000 square feet, right? So this was what the original 2016 feasibility study really spoke to. With all the full meal deal of all the assets and the ideas within it. Then, coronavirus, no one could go to the gym for quite a period of time. And then when people could start going back to the gym, there was a reset in the market. And I'm going to stop there for a second. Maybe, Tyler, you can talk to us a little bit about what you have seen as a professional working on this as a reset in the market. And you just push the button. There you go.
There you go. Thank you. I was told there'd be no technology tonight. Again, thank you all very, very much. So what we're seeing across the country, especially for organizations our size, Portland, San Francisco, San Diego, Chicago, New York, is that we're not seeing a full 100% return of our members, especially our facility members. This is not program participants. These are card-carrying members who use our facilities. And in fact, most YMCAs our size are seeing anywhere between a 50 to 60% return. People adjusted their workout habits, but due to the pandemic. A lot of YMCAs, and especially ours, who have present facilities, are readjusting our thinking as well, too. Instead of returning back to 100%, we're really beginning to budget more towards that norm of 60%. And so that had a dramatic effect upon our plans and what we were originally discussing.
Thank you, Tyler. All right, move on to the next one. So, back to the drawing board. Now, why is a duck on it? Like, I was asked this by staff, they're like, why a duck? Yes, I went to University of Oregon. Yes, I have duck. That isn't why. It's because for the past couple of years, we've all been asked the question is, what is going on? What is happening with the YMCA? I don't see anything. Well, that's because you see the duck above the water. You don't see the duck swimming. So we are truly ducks on the water. That is where we have been and what we have been doing, because we have been churning beneath the surface, but relatively placid above.
Steve, may I interrupt? As a Trojan, I object to this sign.
Duly noted, and yeah, never mind. All right. So we went back to the drawing board and we started working on design modifications. So the past couple of years, since then, since 2022, work's been conducted by the design team to align with the following principles. First, that the YMCA had expected the ability to pay for about a $20 million project. That's what we started with. Up to $10 million of debt, the rest through capital campaign. The idea being to own a recreation center. Now, this is a key differentiation. The idea to own the recreation center versus a previous plan of the YMCA leasing with a purchase option from the private developer. That was a shift. The shift came when the first price tag came, is my understanding of it. Is the first time the price tag for the actual pretty picture came forward, it was determined that the YMCA couldn't afford the pretty picture, the lease for the pretty picture, the rent for the pretty picture on a lease option. So the YMCA said, well, you know, we really, instead of just leasing it with a purchase option, what we really would like to do is we'd like to own the facility. So instead of leasing it with a purchase option where we would ultimately own it, why don't we look at taking on some of our own debt, but also doing our own capital campaign to be able to own that upfront and own our own facility. So now the YMCA at the time was driving the building design, right? Because the YMCA is paying for the building design. So, what we started looking at is some different building design configurations that would hit the mark for providing that $20 million facility that they felt like they could reasonably afford. So that's the first piece. The second piece is the market reset that Tyler just mentioned. The third piece is matching the design to roadway improvements. For the Pioneer Widening Project. Those have also gone through several iterations, because as we've looked at the Pioneer Widening Project, we've looked at ways to narrow the footprint of it, get out of the wetlands, connect with what Union Ridge Town Center is building as an east-west to create an additional access point, not only for the YMCA, but for the Costco and URTC area as well. That went through several iterations as well. So how do we design it so you can actually match up with that? So it went through design adaptations to be able to get to that. And then we also were looking at how are we meeting the community's needs as they were expressed in the feasibility study. So you had a lot of different needles you were trying to thread with this to get to a project. At the same time, and I think it's important to note, that there was still a demonstrated investment by all the parties. As far as the YMCA has identified approximately $800,000 that they've invested in this project to date. They've also worked to enhance their brand recognition and community support. Jennifer Lawrence, who's with us this evening, has stepped up as an executive director and ultimately for the Ridgefield YMCA. Can I still say that she'd be stepping up as our executive director? That Jennifer Lawrence would be our I don't want to get ahead of it. Would be the executive director of a YMCA here in Ridgefield as well. Yeah. They've run summer camps. They've done after-school enrichment. They have youth in government at View Ridge, Healthy Kids Day, Breakfast with Santa. They've done water safety at Acero Apartments where they have a pool, which is awesome for those kids and families to have. Gentle Strength and Stretch for our active older adults, Y Talk series, Spice of Life, senior suppers. And then they've been to a lot of our Ridgefield events, Main Street Days, Oktoberfest with an extra B, Back to School Bash, and others. I know, there's always one thing on the slides, right? We also have had active investment by our other partners. Durgesh Patel has worked with the city since 2020 on the project without compensation. I can't stress this enough. This is an individual who stepped up to seek to help our community provide a key amenity that we didn't have and that we needed, and wasn't getting paid for it, had no reason to stick with us this long other than that he wanted to help deliver a project for this community. And I cannot thank you enough for that. It is amazing that you are still at this table, and I appreciate it. He's not only not been compensated, he's actually done a lot of work, including about $55K in his direct costs, and then countless hours. The city itself has contributed $1.3 million in land purchases and design costs for this project. And the state actually even contributed $250,000 in a capital grant to help with the design costs. So there's been a lot that's been invested, but there's a lot more that's needed. The costs have gone up. As we talked about earlier, the preliminary cost estimates in January 2022 that at 30%, throw it at the wall, see if it sticks, roughly $20 million. Since then, lots of cost escalations, supply chain, material costs, design changes, and time that's gone on. So what we started with was, like I said, about 50,000 square feet. And that, at the earliest estimates, was 27 million. That's closer to probably 38 million if we're talking about in today's dollars and what that would be. But this was kind of the original concept. Okay, we go one more forward. This was an iteration that was done kind of working with the YMCA and the project team to see if there could be some sort of scaling back of it and look at how might we be able to cut some costs here. So you can see that the pools were kind of still there. You've got some of that, but all of that extra area there that was for tenants and for the community center side of it, those are gone. So a lot of the programming space went away in this, and this is 49,000 square feet. Didn't get much smaller, and as you see, actually got more expensive than the original thoughts for this. So we're up to 33.6. We're not going the right direction to get to 20 million at this point. And that was August of 2023. October of 2023, back to the drawing board. All right, how can we cut this down? YMCA was looking at, all right, what things can we do as future expansion? Let's take the gym out. Do that in the future. Maybe we do an outdoor, like a futsal court or something, but we'll do that. Let's flip the pools on their side to be able to save some space. That way, pull us back off the wetland a little bit more. We're down to 35,000 square feet now. So instead of 50, we're now at 35. You can see all the things that have kind of come off and have been shed. The price point, 29 million. It's still not at $20 million. So significantly, and these are the kinds of, this was the churning under the water, is that there was a lot of work, and that I know Tyler and his team were trying to get something they felt they could afford, and it just we having a hard time getting there. In December of 2023, they finally made it to 20 million. This is what 20 million buys you. 20 million buys you a weight and fitness center, a lap pool, some locker rooms, a lobby, and a couple of other things that I can't read, a little community room. Yeah, that's about it.
No, second floor.
No second floor, single story instead of double story. Yeah, pretty picture, go bye-bye. And this is what you get for $20 million. So this is what we saw in December of 2023. This is something that, okay, we're at the $20 million point. Is this something that we're going to present to the council and community as the answer? If you'll remember, we actually had a presentation scheduled for the council and the community in December. This is what we would have been presenting. Thus, it was not presented. Because when we presented it preliminarily to council and to other stakeholders, it came back very clearly that it did not meet the community needs that had been set early on in the project. But it hit the $20 million mark. So, now what? That was the question we were asking at the time is, all right, how do we get back to the community needs but get to something that the YMCA can afford and that we can move forward with as a community? So we looked at some modifications. So the first thing is, just as a reminder, the original finance structure included land, site design, infrastructure from the city, development of the site and the building by the developer, and management and ultimate ownership through the lease with a purchase option by the Y. We looked at a lot of different financing structures as a project team to try to get back to the community needs and that pretty picture, trying to get back to that to try to figure out, is there a way that we can get there that still hits the $20 million price point, meets the community needs, and is deliverable through this partnership. The new finance structure that is now before you for consideration changes it up a little bit. It would have the land and the site design and the infrastructure access still from the city, but also a portion of the permitting and soft costs, which is something that had been discussed early on. And when we talk about soft costs and permitting, these are kind of the development review costs and the soft costs associated with the development of the project. We'll show you a little more of what that looks like from a price tag point. But there are things that we can do as a city to help defray the costs of this project. Secondly, that the building design, instead of being a single structure, that we could actually design it to include two legally separate but functionally seamless, for the purposes of the public, seamless centers. A community center and a recreation center. The community center would be owned by the city. The city would purchase the community center to cost approximately $10 million, whether from bonding or from USDA low-interest loan and grant programs that are available to communities like ours, which fills a need that was created when the former community center transitioned into our new and amazing expanded library. But leaving a gap, leaving a hole in our system that our community has missed, and that I know that our council has seen and that our community has seen, is that we have missed some of what that community center offered to our city. Second, the purchase of a recreation center asset by the YMCA to cost $20 million, funded from a mix of debt and capital campaign. Now again, we'll get into the details of how this all might work here in just a few slides. Development of the site and the building would be still by a private developer. Management of the entire facility would be by the YMCA. That's where we started working with. And that got us into design modifications. Then we had something to shoot at. Then we're looking at a $30 million project in hard costs. We're looking at building a similar center to what the community and the council saw in January 2022. We're delivering the project features that were identified as necessary in the feasibility study, and we're creating two legally separate but functionally seamless assets so that the YMCA could keep to their approximately $20 million threshold for a recreation center, and the city could have a community center that the city would own, and the city as a community would own. And this is what it would look like. Similar to the pretty picture. Again, this is looking at it from the south. This is looking at it from Pioneer. And by the way, and I say this just because Don and Carl are here, and their team had a little fun with the colors on this. So like, I honestly, like they threw this color and they were like, all right, we're doing LEED certification. We want to have this kind of match with the natural environment. They got a little creative with the color scheme on this. We'll get there as far as colors. We got to build the house, well, then we'll paint the house. But you know, we'll start working on that. So I just don't get caught up in that yet. But a lot of the same themes that you saw in the original, right? This is, so you're looking at the natatorium as the two-story with all the natural light coming into it. Natatorium mean where the pools are. The lower, the one story is the community center. I'm talking about this. I'd really rather have you guys tell me about these things because you're at the table and it seems silly because you know much more about it. Would you mind, please, Don, like kind of walk us through these slides a little bit, please? And we'll back up one just to.
Sure. So, yeah, as you can see, we're trying to get the same kind of presentation to Pioneer Street. And by doing this too, now with the other road coming off of it too, we kind of have two fronts of the building. There's really actually no back end of the building. But the idea here was to get south facing, get as much natural light as we could into the building, kind of keep the whole site as a park-like structure, have it blend into it, and also help exemplify the sustainability factors that the city wants and be part of the LEED certification process.
Go to the next one.
Sure. Yep. So the next, this again, as you're kind of coming around the corner, you can see the community center, and we wanted to make sure we gave, just a lot of impact to how this appears, to meet with the city design standards as well. So, have exposed wood where we can. We're looking at potentially CLT, which is a cross-laminated timber. It's a sustainable product that was used at the Rourke, for example. And then, and keeping the south side kind of maximized. Go to the next one if you like. Here's kind of an aerial view of it. You can see some of the solar panels proposed. Also to meet the state energy code as well. But using that to help, maybe we could help heat the pool water, help with the showers. There's really a lot of advantages to having that. And again, keeping that park-like structure, trying to keep the where the trail is, which is right over the sewer line that Steve had mentioned earlier, and part of your trail system. So keeping that there, and then to the south of that, next to Pioneer, there's an actual stream down there, and keeping that as natural as we could. And go ahead and hit the next one. And then here's just kind of a updated view from above, showing how it works with the existing road condition. The lots of areas outside as well that could be program space on the south side. And to the west, you can see there's a pool equipment room, but we're planning on some sort of a balcony on that as well to take advantage of the south and western light. The green area that you see is actually what would be a two-story component above that. So that's kind of how we're showing it here. So the two-story, again, is looking out for the fitness area. It's looking into the natatorium, so you can see the activity throughout. And then, the rest of that is looking out over the city and again, taking advantage of as much southern exposure as we can.
Before we leave this slide, one of the things to note is the community center, you don't see a lot of detail in the community center space. That's on purpose. And the reason for that is because that truly would be a community conversation. What are those aspects of our former community center that we most miss as a community and most want to see brought back? What are those needs moving forward as a community that we most want to see included in that community center? So that would be part of a community conversation to figure out, because we know from the work that's been done over the years, what are those key pieces for a recreation center that our community wanted to see. We haven't asked the question about a community center. So it's something that we very consciously and conspicuously left blank for you all as a council and for the community to talk about. And if you want to just kind of go through anything else on that you wanted to talk through?
No, this actually just kind of shows the second floor in relation to the first floor that you saw on the other drawing. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one.
And so instead of a 50,000 square foot facility, as we first saw in January of 2022, you're looking at about a 43,000 square foot facility. So it is tightened up. So we are doing that in a way to be able to save costs, but we're still delivering on the key aspects of recreation center and facility that was identified in 2016. That was the goal in coming up with this, and you can see construction cost of $30,100,000, which I guess we're gonna go ahead and just round down for the purposes of this. What's 100,000 between friends? So then, next one. So that gets you to the total construction cost. So like I was talking about, there's hard costs and soft costs. And maybe, Durgesh, can you talk us through just a little bit, hard costs, soft costs? How does that work, and what are the different components?
Yeah, definitely. So just from a construction standpoint, hard costs are basically, getting the building up and going. Soft costs are contingencies, interest reserves, ownership, management, managing the project, et cetera. And so that's what the line items are. And contingencies are needed just because in case something goes sideways. So.
And then the next page, this is also something that, Durgesh, that you helped put together, and do you want to kind of walk through that just a little bit?
Yeah, so these numbers, so from a revenue standpoint, right, this is just basically taking estimation of not just Ridgefield, but some of your surrounding cities and figuring out how many households we can actually hit, and then contributing that from year-over-year standpoint. So I'll just kind of make it as simple as I can from left to right. Revenue is money coming in. Operations is, what is it going to take to run it? And then your net operating income is basically column A, revenue minus the operations. The debt service is what do you have to pay on an annual basis, and then what are you left with? So as you can see, in the first year, you're basically breaking even. But that's pretty normal for any time you bring up a business or a building, as first year you're going into stabilization mode. And then after that, you can kind of get the wheels cranking.
Thanks, Durgesh. And these are the kinds of things that we would need to tighten up as we get into the next steps, which I'll go to right now. So the next steps are, so the first piece of this is throughout the course of these conversations, we've walked through a variety of different ways to deliver the project. The way that we are presenting it to you this evening is a little different than we've talked about before. It involves an investment from the city in an asset that we hadn't really talked about before. So what we are looking at is, as our next steps, is that we need your authority to proceed with engaging with Blue Rock Ventures, with Durgesh, with the YMCA to create an MOU. Structure the partnership. What is it going to look like specifically? There are a lot of different ways to skin this. The private developer would build the facility. The city would purchase a community center prior to construction to create a $10 million upfront cash flow that helps on the investment side to be able to make this work from a private standpoint. However, for the rest of the facility, for the YMCA's piece of this, there are several ways that it could move forward. Either that the YMCA could purchase the recreation center prior to occupancy because capital campaign comes together, the debt comes together, before occupancy hits, the money's ready to go, the 20 million's there, and they purchase it and they own it on day one. Secondly, that they could purchase it after occupancy. In the interim, Durgesh and Blue Rock have talked about being, and I don't like putting words in it, but being willing to actually not only build a facility, but work with us to get the facility up and running with a management contract in place where it is privately held, where the recreation center would be privately held, and then it would be assessed. There would have to be an appraisal of the value of that recreation center for the purchase that the YMCA would do of the recreation center asset. Or third, that the YMCA would just manage the entire facility. That the YMCA comes back and says, all right, well, we've looked at this, and ultimately we want to, we're more comfortable just managing the facility. There are several different ways that could end up playing out, but we want to make sure that we get that all locked down. We want to make sure that, Durgesh needs to know it and Blue Rock needs to know it because they're building a facility, that there is significant risk and there's outlay of costs associated with. The community being involved in this requires that we do our due diligence and that we are assured that a project that is going to be built is serving our community appropriately. And for the why, they need to know what they're shooting for. They need to know what they're going after for this. So that's the first step, is really developing that MOU with the structure of it. Second would be finalizing the building and site design, determining the community center features as we talked about before, permitting processes, working with the Y to assist in kicking off a capital campaign, and then putting together a finance package for the city's portion of that, of the investment, and having our finance director, myself, our team working with council to determine options for how a community center could be delivered for our city. And here's a timeline. This is rough timeline. Can't express that more. But starts now. But the first thing I have down there is the summer of 2024. That's when the YMCA has identified that they are ready to launch a capital campaign. Also in the summer of this year would be finalizing the building and site plan design. A lot of that work's already been done. This is really like, we got to get to the final on this though. And then we would be submitting permit applications associated with it. Also of note, collaborating, coordinating with the road widening projects that are going on, because we have a lot of projects already happening. We've already been working with our project teams to find areas of commonality and potentially cost savings by doing those projects at the same time, or at least working one and then the other and leveraging the timing associated with that. Then in January of 2025, the idea would be to be permit ready. In spring, we finalize our funding, we break ground. By the end of 2025, the capital campaign would be, if we start this summer, the idea would be to have the YMCA funding campaign finalized. And then in summer of 2026, with a 16-month build, that would be the time to open the doors and cut a ribbon and invite the community in to their facility. What does a capital campaign timeline look like? Because I know that's been a question that's been raised in our community, is like, how are we going to get going on this? This is what it looks like. April of 2024. Well, and again, I have the person who drafted this here. And maybe you could walk through this slide, Tyler. Sorry. I hear myself talk so much, so it's nice to hear other people.
I shared with my board I wasn't talking tonight, and they said, yeah, right. No, thank you. So Steve and I have been talking a little bit about what a typical capital campaign would look like, and I would share with you, prior to anything that we just talked about, it usually takes a YMCA about anywhere between 12 to 24 months to ramp itself up to get ready for a capital campaign. We've been doing a lot of that work already, especially with the great work of our executive director, Jennifer Lawrence, and a wonderful steering advisory committee that she's recruited from people here in the great Ridgefield area. So this is a little bit of an escalated, accelerated campaign, if you will, but a lot of this work has already been done, if you will. So when you look at the first couple of months, you're really basically just developing a lot of the collateral material. These are the printed brochures, if you will, the social media campaigns, making sure that we've got a committee that's overseeing this particular project. Most of this work has either been theorized, if that's a good word, or discussed. It's just a matter of pulling the trigger. So we'd probably take about 2 months to get ourselves prepared and launch in June at that point. And again, a lot of this work has already been done by Jennifer and her team.
Perfect. Thanks, Tyler. All right. And that is basically the gist of it. That is where we are today. That is where we have come from. The next steps that we see as a potential way to move the project forward. We are here to answer your questions, because we know that you have heard a lot from your constituents, residents of this community, and heard their questions and have shared those internally, but this is our opportunity to really hopefully help answer some of those for you here in this session. So Mayor, I'd turn it back over to you, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, I guess you guys are all on the hot seat. So, Council, Ms. Chipman.
What does the 7,000 feet less cut out?
Of the overall square footage? Well, it kind of cuts out areas that we haven't really programmed in for for the community center yet. So it's kind of helps give us a ballpark more of what to shoot for. And as we further the design, we're going to look at how we can maximize that space, the 43,000, just to get up to it. Yeah, there's still a little more design work to do on this, just to make that work.
But a shorter answer is that, sorry. A shorter answer is that the fitness spaces are a little bit smaller. The upper floor, the main floor, it's just less square footage.
I guess what I want to make sure is that when we surveyed people and they said what they really wanted, that those things are still there, that none of those are gone. They might be a little smaller, but that they're still there in this new plan, even though we're cutting out a little bit of feet. Is that correct?
It is correct, and it was interesting for me to see how Steve has brought this together to go back to 2016 and that initial study. As he's punching through those items, they're still in this facility. They're 7,000 square foot less.
Okay,
than
thank you.
Than 2 years ago.
Okay.
Just another follow-up. The pool design and, excuse me, size and the gym, would they be the same size as the original proposal?
Yes, yes. So the gym and the elevated walking track, which we didn't point out here, which is one of the things that people had asked for, is the same size. The lap pool is the same 6-lane as well as the family pool.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I know it's been already said, but thank you all so much for being here tonight in Durgash. It cannot be said enough how much we appreciate your willingness to work with our community, so thank you. And this question I think is for both for Tyler and Durgash. So I don't know if you want to bounce back to it, Steve, but on slide 5, it had the original feasibility membership projections, and that had us around 2,800 units or whatever you might want to say. And then, so Tyler, you were saying that current facilities are operating at like 60% capacity, right? Where we were pre-pandemic, right? So I guess my question is, how do the original 50,000 square foot unit would be supported by those numbers, right? Is that kind of what we were thinking? Is that correct?
I can speak into it by reading, and I was not here during this
Sure,
particular
right.
time. So I would say, sure, I know the feasibility study
Okay.
individuals, so I would say sure.
Okay, so understanding that our population has doubled and that we're serving a larger area than just the city of Ridgefield, and then Durgash, your numbers, now I'm gonna make you mouse back forward to slide 42. Those show around like the 4,000 to
Yeah.
5,000 households.
Yep.
Based on our population doubling, but less people going into the facilities, are the numbers still correlating properly?
Yeah.
Do we anticipate that we're gonna have enough households and members to make this pencil out?
Yeah, so a couple things drove the incline. One was the growth, not just for you guys, but your neighboring cities. The second is what Tyler's talking about is the decline that happened post-COVID. The building's not going to be up for another couple of years. So we are anticipating that incline again in the next couple of years to kind of get us a normalization.
So do these numbers reflect a potential, a little of that decline, or are they still optimistic numbers at like 100%?
No,
Do
this
they
is
take that into-
optimistic I'm not saying, nothing's at 100%. These are probably closer to 80.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
we've left some wiggle room.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And I have some other questions, but I'll pass it on to Councilor Cole.
Sure. I'm more concerned about the below the surface part of the duct, because it seems like we've spent a lot of time communicating with the public, as was detailed tonight, about what the public sees. And I think that what is presented tonight still tends to be a little bit of a rosy picture of what has happened to this state. There's been some unforeseen circumstance. I mean, a global pandemic is definitely something unforeseen. And what that does to your membership numbers, I think, is also something like, what our projections are as well. I'm a little concerned about, going back to this original $20 million all-in price tag that was foreseen. And, going back to where we had concepts rendered in 2020, and we looked at those and we said there was no cost assigned to that. And I understand that too, but I guess first of all, I'm wondering, where did that initial $20 million all in come from? Did that come from working with the architects and Durgesh, or is that coming from you guys?
I can answer that, Council.
Yeah.
That actually came from a feasibility study that we did
Okay.
back in 2020 and then reinforced in 2022.
Okay.
And it really was, this is the capacity and potential that we feel the YMCA could raise, either raised through contributions, raised through government funding, raised through contributions and bank lending. I can refine that a little bit, knowing that right now in our association, as we still are recovering from the effects of the pandemic. I usually have that effect upon people and things. Okay. Usually when I hear that, it means I went over my time, so I'm done at this point. As we're recovering, we're still recovering from the pandemic. I see a great hope for our association. We're being very careful about our cash flow and our management. We have spoken to certain lenders to say, look, are we an attractive organization for you to lend money to? What would that look like? So we also know our debt threshold right now currently is about 10 million. So we're using that $10 million figure as our debt threshold to say, okay, can we raise an additional 10? Could we raise all 20? Could we raise even more than that?
Right. Okay. Because I guess what I didn't also see here was a previous timeline. We showed like the way forward, right? What we're planning on doing between now and what I guess the 2026, so 2 years from now. But I guess what doesn't show is that we're essentially 2 years behind because I think the original timeline was showed that we were supposed to open now. Like now, we're supposed to be there, right? We were supposed to break ground last year. I know this because I got up at the State of the City last year. I was on point to say, hey, this is what's coming in community. This is, and so I felt like, my credibility too, as somebody who represents the public was a little bit damaged in that to say, we're going to do this, we're promising the public this, and then we just saw nothing happen. And I understand there's definitely some budget constraints there, but like, I guess this is good. This feels good. Like everything that has been presented us to so far has been a very rosy picture. It feels really good. But I also have to kind of bake in a little bit of skepticism to say like, well, okay, how do we know we're not going to end up in 2028 or 2030 or at all? Like what's our assurances that this is actually, we're going to stick to this because we haven't stuck to this at all at this point?
I'll take the first part, and then maybe I'll ask Steve to take the second part. That's us. The stops and starts of the why. It's not the fault of the city. It's not the fault of the architects. It's not the fault of Durgesh. It's just the reality of our organization arising from the pandemic. I've been with the Y for 36 years. I started when I was 5. Never gets a laugh, but thank you very much. And I've actually experienced 4 to 5 capital campaigns in my career. I haven't seen one that's had so many stops and starts, yet we are facing the same thing that most YMCAs across the country are facing right now, that we had these plans, we're looking pretty good. Oh, wait. Oh, the effects of the pandemic. Oh, my gosh. Oh, wait. We've got YMCAs across the country right now, very healthy YMCAs that were in the middle of a capital campaign that right now are facing bankruptcy.
Sure.
So we're not there, and we're not in that kind of position. So, again, that's us. And I told Steve, I came here to apologize to not only the community and the council itself, but to our staff, especially Jennifer, who I think has suffered multiple cases of whiplash, of like, we're doing what, we're doing what, we're doing what, we're doing what. Do I think this is a very realistic plan? Yes, I believe that we can go get $20 million, and we're excited about that at that point.
Okay.
And then from how do you assure that it's not happening? One of the things that we've been talking about internally, and Tyler's been a part of this conversation, Durgesh and I significantly have had conversations about about just moving forward, that we're done waiting. If the council gives us the go-ahead to move forward with a structure like this, Durgesh and Blue Rock Ventures is ready to build a building. They're ready to build these assets, and if we, as a community, invest in that community center, then there is the funding, there is the seed money to be able to actually build that and make it financeable. And again, I don't want to be speaking for you, Durgesh, but that this is something that makes it work to do a public-private on. And that if the YMCA has the funding to be able to purchase the recreation center asset, awesome. If the YMCA has the money to purchase the recreation center asset after it gets open, great. If the YMCA doesn't have the funds available to do that at opening, then we talk with them about a management contract, that they could manage it. And if they weren't comfortable doing that, we can go out to bid for a management contract. But the reality is, the timeline that you see, the MOU doesn't stop the other pieces. So the building and site plan, the permit readiness, the city funding, the groundbreaking, that happens. The MOU would have to be done between Blue Rock Ventures and the city for that aspect of it, but we're not waiting for the funds to be gathered in this scenario in a capital campaign. The capital campaign comes in, and then when there's a building, then they're going to be working between Blue Rock Ventures and the YMCA on a purchase of an asset of the recreation center. But that's one of the key ways we can kind of, as a community, take the lead. And this is, I mean, it's part of the investment, right? I mean, part of the investment is not waiting anymore. Part of that investment is saying, we're done waiting as a community, we're moving forward with this, we're putting skin in the game to make sure that happens.
Sure.
I want to add a little bit to that. Steve, would you mind rolling that slide up that has our capital campaign timeline? When I submitted this to Steve at one time, and this was probably about a week ago, we were looking at potentially an opening of spring of 2026. It gives me a little bit more confidence that we're thinking more about a summer campaign. So we might peek more into a little bit of 2026, knowing we're going to continually raise money. We're going to continually do everything that we can. My hope is not to borrow a thing, to be honest with you. We'd love to come in debt-free, but the realities are realities of things. But again, I reiterate one more time, this is on us. And again, I apologize on behalf of the organization for all the delays.
So, you know, I'll talk about the time commitments because a lot of time has gone in. I still remember during Christmas even talking to Steve, and I probably call him more than I should these days. But Steve knows this, so I'll go ahead and address it to everyone in the room. Is, you know, I'm eager to go. We've been waiting. In fact, Carl and I have been talking about a strategy of what does this look like after this meeting. And we've got a plan of attack on how to get to permit ready and then post that. So, from on behalf of Blue Rock, you know, as long as we can get it go, I don't see any issues from our side.
Mr. Wells?
I'm going to direct my question away from the panel and to the city manager. We're talking about $10 million from the city of Ridgefield. What kind of bonding authority do we have or available to carry on a project like this?
So currently the city has councilmanic bonding authority, councilmanic meaning council approved, bonding authority available to you of about $38.5 million. Of that $38.5 million, we are anticipating that $30 million will be used for the Pioneer widening projects, with the repayment of that $30 million bond coming from the tax increment financing area that you approved earlier this year. And so that 30 gone. So then you have about $8.5 million of councilmanic bonding authority available. Our bonding authority that is councilmanic continues to go up over time based on the valuation increases of our community. Meaning the more stuff that gets built, the bigger we get, the more valuation we have a community, the more that you can actually borrow in either councilmanic or voter approved. We expect that by the end of this year, we will be over 40 million, thus we would be over 10 million in councilmanic bonding authority. That would give you the option or opportunity to either go out to bond, similar as to how we have done for the outdoor recreation complex, for the Public Works Operations Center, or ultimately for the Pioneer road widening projects, or that we go to the USDA and engage them on their low interest loan programs. We've had multiple meetings with USDA at the local and federal level. They have a significant pot of money available throughout the country for community center projects. Key. Community center projects, not recreation centers, community centers. So guess what we're building? A community center. So community center projects, there's lots of money available at the federal level, low interest, lower than what we could get on the bond market, and with more flexible terms. So that's something we would look at, multiple options to be able to get the best return on investment and best terms for that investment as well. Part of the go, no go from council, it isn't to approve a bond. That's something that would have to come to you. It's not to approve an MOU. That's a contract. That has to come to you as well. The go, no go for us is go do the work. You know, go do the work, get the answers, bring it back to us. And so that we can then bring you the detail of what would work best for us as an organization and as a community.
Under the question that I had was how soon can we start? But we've got a generalization there. One of the things that I tack on to Mr. Wells's question, and that's how soon can the city, because I'm assuming that that's the money that we start with, how soon can the city how long would it take to get a bond, and or how long would it take to get a grant or a loan from the whatever it is?
So USDA is a rolling
USDA.
process, so they have a rolling term. So there is no specific date where you have to have applied by. It's a rolling application process. So as long as they have money that's already been allocated by the federal government to them, which they do, then you can apply at any time for that. With regards to when we would do that, we would want to be sure that we're doing it at a time that we had the bonding capacity to be able to make that work. We'd be looking at the market. These are details, but that's where we go. Every time we go to bond, we look at the timing in the market. Are we timing it to get the best interest rates associated with it? Even at the USDA program level, they do adjust those interest rates. So if the Fed flattens or even lowers an interest rate, and that affects the bond market, that helps us. So there's timing associated with it that we'd be looking at, but what you see on the timetable before you is by spring of next year, which is by the time we're ready to break ground, that we have the bond in place to be able to provide the investment in the asset to move forward with the project.
Okay, and this is completely a little bit opposite that, and maybe it's just a CPA question, but how do you share the costs, profits, overruns? How does that come out?
So we've talked a fair amount about it as far as the management side of this, right? So whether the YMCA owned the recreation center or Durgesh and Blue Rock Ventures owns that asset, the question would be, okay, through a management contract, how are you sharing revenues associated with it? That would be an agreement that we'd have to work out based on the assets and the programming in each of those areas. So you're looking at where are the revenue generators, where are the revenue generating entities within the structure, and how are you assigning value to those? And so that would be part of the contract. And again, we're relatively trained in doing this because we have one with the outdoor recreation complex. We have maintenance, we have an interlocal with the school district for maintenance, use, for financing for the construction side of it so we have a pretty good history of that we've learned from to get better at, to be able to create those kinds of documents and agreements.
Jennifer or Matt?
So I understand like what I guess, Mr. Stewart, you're looking for us, Mr. Patel, what you're looking for us. You're looking for us like what's the way forward here, as far as an MOU is concerned and how we move forward. I get that, and I'm inclined to say, look, we've heard. I mean, if there's one question I get asked all the time from the community here is what's going on with the YMCA? Like, people always want to know. I mean, you see it if you pay attention to our social media, you see that all the time. What's going on with the YMCA, right? And I think that people here have really said they really want a community and recreation center. So I think that we want to be able to provide that. I'm a resident here too. I would love to have that here. So I'm in favor of that moving forward, just so that we're clear. I'm in favor of pursuing those options. I'm still a little bit foggy on where maybe Tyler, the YMCA fits, in this picture. Like, where is your seat at the table, given all the changing dynamics here? What is your level of investment? Because it seems like the city is getting ready to take on $10 million of debt. Mr. Patel, you're going to make a significant investment of around $20 million, right? Yeah. Change, they're just zeros. Come on. So I hear that, and that covers our price tag. And what I heard from Mr. Stewart is that we're not waiting around anymore, which I'm really glad to hear, because I think that we do need to move forward. We're already 2 years behind. So I guess, Tyler, what do you foresee as a wise investment at this point?
Well, as the slide shows, we've already invested quite a significant amount of money. We're still looking at that $20 million campaign to purchase the facility. I don't want this to sound arrogant. I really do not. When I make these comments, boy, that sounds kind of arrogant. Healthy YMCAs control their own destiny. We are coming out of a 30-some year agreement with the city of Sherwood, where we're in the process of purchasing that particular facility. If we would look back, we still thought it was a great deal, but because of some of the roadblocks that we faced and some of the restrictions that we had through the management agreement, we might have looked at it and gone, no, that's not for us. What we will do is we'll raise the money to buy the facility. So from our side and our intention is to raise the money to buy the facility from Durgesh so that we can own the facility. And then work with the city on, okay, what do these programs look like? What would you like to see? And we're a community organization. We work with communities, and we want to address the community's needs. And you all know the community's needs much better than me. So if you say, no, what you really need to look at is a teen program for 15 to 17-year-olds, or we were looking at a 12 to 10, sure, we're going to listen to all of that.
Yeah. Do you have a timeline on what you're thinking? Like, what would that look like to you? Like, what is your organization willing to commit to as far as purchasing that $20 million asset from Mr. Patel at this point?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of our board. I think we have a board member here. So I can't speak on behalf of the board because we haven't really fleshed all this out. If you just were to ask me as the CEO, my hope would be I'm cutting a check to Durgesh on the day that we open and say, great, thank you for building it, we own it. But I also am realistic about the options as well, too, that, well, what if we, and I'm just making this up, what if we were to raise $15 million and we come to Durgesh and said, okay, what would it look like if we were to manage the facility, pay whatever to manage the facility at a price that we can afford while still raising the money? So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Thank you. So I am excited about the idea that was presented this evening of being able to move forward and the new timeline and the funding options and everything. And I really appreciate all this time that Mr. Stewart put into putting this together, because he had to do a little time travel, I think, to get it all there. But my only concern is I feel a little bit like Groundhog Day. Like, we've had this conversation before, and I want to make sure that in 2 years, we're not having this conversation again. In 2 years, we're opening doors, and we're not sitting here going, why are we still trying to break ground? So what assurance I need to hear is that it sounds like, from how this is going to be codified through an MOU, is that Blue Rock is taking the lead on the construction and financing of the recreation facility. The city is taking the lead on the financing of the community center, and we are leading. We're driving this project, and that the success of the capital campaign of the YMCA does not impact whether or not this facility breaks ground or not.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Nor does it,
Oh, go ahead.
nor does it impact the opening or management of it.
Also correct.
Okay.
Okay, so with those assurances, I would like to, my recommendation would be that the city would look forward into funding options for the community center and to start working on MOU with Blue Rock Ventures to start constructing the recreational facility.
I agree.
I also agree. Look forward to being able to tell our citizens that, yes, we do have a YMCA and a community center that will be open shortly.
Okay. I got another off-the-wall question. I'm getting down into weeds a little bit, but as one of the 7 stewards of the city's finances for the community, with entering into this agreement, and the city is taking the burden on its back, and it will be serving more than our community. It'll be the surrounding communities. Is there a fee schedule that may turn around and benefit the local residents rather than county-wide residents or Les Centers or Battlegrounds or whatever?
Quick answer is yes. We had this conversation early on in the process, years ago. We had this conversation about how if the city's going to put land into this and dedicate land, that if we don't get a public benefit from that investment, then it's a gift of public funds. So you actually have to show the residents of Ridgefield are benefiting specifically from that investment. So one of the ways that we talked about, and we've talked about it throughout, is how can we build a structure in place that, whether it is initiation fees or ongoing rate structure, that there is a benefit to local residents of Ridgefield as members of that Y. So as members of the Ridgefield Y, that there would be a financial benefit to them in joining. So, yes.
Mr. Cole, anything?
I'll just end with this. I have a saying that I've been saying, especially about this project, is the absence of communication is imagination, and there's been a lot of imagination going on. And so one of the things I think that maybe as we look towards the future, the next 2 years, I would really hope to hear some better below the pond type of communication from all parties on this, so that the public is not left guessing what the possibilities are. I think that they deserve to know. They've been incredibly patient in this process, and I thank you, people who are here, for your grace on this, because I know that there has been a lot of churning happening, paddling, and we're getting there, and we really do want to have the YMCA as a great partner. I think that there's no other partner that makes sense for this, but we really hope you guys step it up too, and really kind of come to the table to prepare to get this thing done over the timeline that's been loosely presented here tonight. So, and I think we can do that. I think we can open the doors to a new community and recreation center in a couple of years, and it'll be to the public benefit. But again, it's going to take good communication on our parts as well.
I totally agree. One of the things that we have excluded, we didn't ask Jennifer how full her purse was, but I am for this and is moving as fast as we can and being responsible about it, but I'd appreciate any final words from you.
It's hard for me to sit still and not comment on everything. Just a couple of points, Steve, way to bring this together for people to see from 22 to now. There has been a lot of work, and I'll apologize along with Tyler that we haven't been in front of you. It's been 2 solid years, but I hope the descriptions show that the building, we're in charge of the building, and then of course the size of the building goes to the funding. We're not in charge of construction cost increases, but you saw how the building originally started, and then it shrunk a little bit, and then it changed. And all this time, we're working hard. We never came to you folks. I think in hindsight, there could have been a few steps in there. I just wrote a note to myself. We have schematic design, design development, construction documents. We just need to build into that schedule coming back to this group. So that's my thought. Well, thanks, Don. So do I.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to kind of kicking it into gear, these next steps, and get this going as well. We've had a lot of coordination. My hair was dark when we started this. No, not that. But anyway, yeah. So we're really looking forward to this, and we're glad to be a part of it. And we'll do our best to give you the best facility we can.
Once again, thank you. I appreciate it, council members. And so as far as transparency goes, I think, and Carl knows, is one of the action items coming out of this meeting, for me at least, was to kind of get next steps with Steve to figure out, from a steering committee internally standpoint, what does that look like? What do the next steps look like? And so however the cadence that Steve feels according with the council members, whether it's monthly, bi-weekly, whatever it is, happy to send them, show up. Just know you guys have our attention as well as far as detail goes. And I get this is a very big project, as it should be. And so whatever transparency is required, please don't feel free to ask.
Thank you. Last but not least.
Well, first of all, as somebody who did live on this type of menu for many years, congratulations on In-N-Out.
Oh.
So when you talk about valuation, there's your valuation right there at that point. Again, I say it one last time. I apologize for the lack of communication. Lots of unforeseen things have happened. We're excited. I feel very confident with the work Jennifer has done and our team has done, that $20 million is something that we easily can accomplish. I look forward to being part of this community and continually being part of this community. So thank you all very much.
And
Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. I just want to thank you, council. I think I've heard the direction that we need. So I very much appreciate your latitude in having the conversation with us. And as with the rest of the project team, as your manager, it is my responsibility to make sure that we are communicating with you and the community, and it is on me, not our project partners, to make sure that that occurs. So we're sorry for the lapses that occurred. We will assure we do more regular communication as we're moving forward with this, so that we not only deliver a project that the community is proud of, but we keep in the loop on what's going on with it along the path. And we will take that to heart. So I appreciate the guidance on that. If there are any more questions that we can answer, I'm happy to answer them. But like I said, I think we have the guidance that we are looking for, and we are excited about the next steps.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the crowd that came tonight. We appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. We're looking to go to work.